Here we go. 3.5, we are dealing with equations with the variable on both sides. So we are going to solve equations with the variable on both sides. Still solving equations, we're just taking it up a notch. To warm up, are we solving equations on these? No, how do I know these are not equations? They don't have an equals sign. If there's no equals sign, there's nothing to solve. We are just going to be simplifying or combining like terms. Okay, so that's all we're doing here. Simplifying, combining like terms. All right, on number 1. Ryan, what can we combine?
2x minus 2x.
The 2x and the negative 2x can combine. What would that give us?
0.
0. So what are we left with?
3.
Just 3. That would be our final answer. A positive 2x and a negative 2x would cancel out. All right, on number 2, Carl, what's the first thing I need to do? What's that special word that begins with a D? Distribute. We need to distribute that 2 to the 4t and to the 6. 8t plus 12. What happens with this minus 4t? For now, we just drop it down and then it combines with the 8t. If we combine 8t minus 4t, what do we get? Carl's helping me out with this one. What is it? 4t. And what happens with the 12? Good. We just drop it down next to the 4t because it doesn't have a variable, so they cannot get combined. All right, number 3. Danielle, what would I do on number 3?
Combine like 10.
Okay, what can be combined?
Negative 2w plus 2w.
And what does that give me?
0.
So what am I left with?
55.
Wonderful. Positive 2w and a negative 2w combined to 0, so we're just left with 55. Jaquan, what do I need to do on number 4? Very good. What?
8 plus 5 minus 1 minus x, and then you get 7 plus 4x.
Okay, let's back up just a minute. 8 plus 5x, right? And then minus what? Minus 5 minus x. Very good. All right, Jaquan, what comes next?
Subtract 5 from 8 and you get 3.
Okay.
And 5x minus x is 4x. So then you have 3 plus 4x.
Very good. So we combine like terms. 8 minus 5 is 3. 5x minus x is 4x. If you wrote it as 4x plus 3, that's also okay. Either way, it's the same thing. All right, one more warm up to do. Adrian, what terms can we combine on number 5? The u's? And if we combine those, what do we get? 0. So what are we left with? 22. Wonderful. Again, if you have opposites of the same exact term, they cancel to 0. So we're just left with 22. It doesn't matter that one came in the front and one came in the back. We can still combine those to get 0, so we're left with 22. In order to solve equations with variables on both sides, we must regroup to get them on the same side. So we need all of our variables to be on the same side together. Okay? Remember, to make these equations simpler, always move the smaller variable when possible. This isn't a requirement, it's just meant to help make it easier for you. Okay. When we solved equations before, earlier this week, last week, we always boxed in the variable when we first started. Well, some of you did. I always did. But if we have two variables, or the same variable written twice, we can't box it in yet. Okay, so we need to get it down to where the variable's on one side before we can box it in. I am still going to split my equation up so that I can tell which side is which. Now I have two variables, well, two a's, right? An 8a and a 2a. Which of those is smaller? 2a. So my note or hint from above says that it's easier if we move the smaller one. How am I going to zero out a positive 2a, Deja? Subtract 2a. So yes, I do want to subtract it from 8a. But if I do it to one side, I do it to the other. So I need to see that you're doing it on both sides. So to zero out a positive 2a, we subtract 2a. Those are going to cancel out to 0. 8a minus 2a is 6a. That equals 30. Now that I'm down to just having one variable written, I could box it in. Who can raise their hand and tell me what I need to do to both sides? Kian? Divide by 6. So we get a equals 5. Very good. Now again, we haven't talked about this in a while, but we can always go back and check these problems. If I take my variable and I plug it back in to the original problem, I can see if I'm right. So what am I going to plug into both of those blanks? The 5, right? That's what a was. So I would plug 5 in. What's 8 times 5? What's 2 times 5? What's 10 plus 30? So did we get it right? Yes, if you end up with a true statement, 40 equals 40, that's a true statement, we got it right. So a equals 5 is our answer. You do not have to check it unless the directions tell you to. I just want you to know how to check your work. So anytime you're not sure if you got a problem right, you don't have to come ask me or ask a tutor, ask somebody. You can check your own work. Isn't that wonderful? You don't need anybody. Rely on yourself. I'm still here to help you if you need it. Okay. Example 2. Again, I'm going to split this up. Again, we've got two t's. Which is smaller? The negative 60 is considered smaller, so that's when it gets a little tricky. You've got to consider that minus 60 is a negative 60. So that's the one that we are recommended to move. Jamal Dixon, can you help me with this problem? Very good. What does that give me? 10t equals? Wonderful. All right. Divide by 10. T equals 5. Wonderful. All right, on number 3. Do I have any new volunteers that I haven't heard from yet today that want to help me out? Lexi. I'm being a little picky. I'm not just subtracting 4, I'm subtracting
4x.
4x, thank you. I know it's picky, but that's just how I am about these. Okay, what comes after that?
2x equals 15.
Wonderful.
Can you divide 2 on both sides?
I like it.
And x equals 9.
X equals 9. Wonderful. Alright, so we had to get our variables all together and then solve it by dividing. Alright, on number 4. So when we distribute, what do we get, Kion? 3w plus 3. Wonderful. Okay, and then what did you decide to do next? I like that. This one's a little different from what we've seen before. What did that leave us with? Equals? What's 2w minus 2w? 0. So this one's a little different. These problems tend to confuse people because we end up with a 0 on that side. There's nothing really special or different about it. It doesn't just disappear. Right? 2w minus 2w equals 0, so that's what we should write down. Alright, Kion, what's our last step to get w all alone? Very good. Subtract 3 from both sides and we get w equals? Negative 3. Alright, so that problem was a little bit different. Alright, I'll start talking through example 5 because it's a little different from what we've seen. I think we already said the first step is going to be to distribute. If I distribute the 4, what do I get? 4r minus 36. What happens to this plus 2? Drops down. Equals 12r plus 14. Can anyone raise their hand and tell me what we should do next? Jakeem? Very good. What are you combining? Good. What does that give you? Wonderful. If we combine the minus 36 plus 2, because they're on the same side already, we get a negative 34. So 4r minus 34 equals 12r plus 14. Okay, now we've got some moving to do. We need to move our variable. Which one should we move, the 4r or the 12r? The 4r. It's recommended to move your smaller one. 4r is smaller. How are we going to move it? Using subtraction. But if I do it to this side, I have to do it on the other side. Remember, we only do it from the other one that has an r. Sometimes I see students do something weird like subtract 4 from everything and the whole problem. I don't really know why. That just happens. Okay, so they zero out, and what are we left with on the left side? Negative 34. So 0 minus 34, but that's negative 34 equals 8r plus 14. Now this problem is just like what we saw in our quiz yesterday. Right now it's just a two-step problem. We are trying to get r by itself. We can't add those together because they're not like terms. How are we going to undo adding 14? Subtract 14. But if I do it on one side, I have to do it to the other. Negative 34 minus 14, Houston. So if they're both negative, we add them and we keep it negative. So what is 3 plus 1? 4. 4 plus 4 is 8. Okay, so we get negative 48 equals 8r. We're still not done. We got to undo this multiplication. How do we undo multiplication, Houston? Division. So we divide by 8. A negative divided by a positive means my answer is Houston. You're still helping me out. A negative divided by a positive is a 48 divided by 8, Houston. This is what our quiz was over yesterday. I expect that this part of it comes pretty quickly. We should end up with r equals -6 or -6 equals r. If you rewrite it the other way, that's fine with me. Alright, my first question for you about number 6 is which of our variable terms is smaller? Which of these is smaller? 1 or -2? -2 is smaller. Now, if you moved the x, that doesn't mean you got it wrong. It's possible to do this problem moving the 1x instead. But I'm going to do it moving the -2x. Okay, and we can see if we got the same answer. So if you moved the x, it's fine. Just make sure that we ended up with the same answer in the end. How do I undo -2x? I'll pull sticks. I'll make it go. May, how do I undo -2x?
Add 2x on both sides.
Wonderful. That leaves me with 89 plus 3x equals 2. Alright, I'm trying to get x by itself. Logan, what do you think I need to do to get x by itself? Alright, let's look at what we've got so far. So we move, Logan, we move what's furthest away from our variable first. So that means I'm moving this 89. How am I going to zero out a positive 89? Do what? Minus 89. Subtract 89. We need to do that to both sides. So we get 3x equals, calculators are helpful, this would be a -87. Tariana, what's my last step to solve? Divide by?
87.
No, what's next to the x? A 3, that's what we want to divide by. We divide by whatever is being multiplied to our variable. So if you need to rebox your variable to remind yourself of that, go for it. Alright, those cancel out. -87 divided by 3 is -29. Alright. Moving right along. We kind of talked about what to do first here. What is it going to be? Multiply by 3. We need to get rid of that denominator. Don't then distribute this 3 into the numerator. Those 3's just cancel each other out. That was the whole point of doing that. So we have x minus 2 equals 3x. Does anyone want to volunteer and tell me what they did for the rest of this? Ellie.
I subtracted x from each side.
Subtract x. Good. What did that leave you with?
-2 equals -2x.
3 minus 1 would be a positive 2x, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I divided each side by 2.
Wonderful.
I got -1 equals x.
Good. X equals -1 or -1 equals x. Either way you say it, it's the same thing. I like it. Alright, are we ready to move on? Again, what did we say we were going to do on both sides? Times by 9. And we said that those would cancel out, leaving us with 8 plus x equals 9x. Anyone volunteering? Jaquan?
And then you subtract x from each side, and then I got 8 equals 8x, and then I divided each by 8, and then x equals 1.
Very good. I like it a lot. Subtract x from both sides, then divide by 8. We get x equals 1. All right, on number 9. This one is a doozy. It's actually not so bad. Which of these is smaller, 3/5 or negative 8/5? Negative. A negative is always going to be smaller. So we are going to add 8/5 x to both sides. Add 8/5 x. Now these are not so bad, right? 8/5 plus 3/5. We just add the numerators. What do we get? 8 plus 3? No. 11/5. 11/5 x equals 4. What do we do to get rid of a fraction in front of our variable? Multiply by the reciprocal. All right, so we're left with x equals, what's 4 times 5? 20 over 11. Just leave it like that. That doesn't simplify, so we'll leave it alone. This next one, a little tricky, but not awful. Which one of these is smaller? Negative 17 or 1? Negative 17 is smaller. So we add 17w to both sides. What does that leave us with over here? 0. You need to write that 0. What's 1 plus 17? How am I going to solve this? Divide just by 18. We just leave the variable alone. What's 0 divided by 18?
0.
That's it. That is your answer. Nothing like completely goes away. We still have a 0 there. Okay, so 18 divided on both sides, 0 divided by 18 is still 0. All right, let's get these notes filled in. If your variables cancel out and the left side equals the right, your answer is all real numbers. If your variables cancel out and the left side does not equal the right, your answer is no solution. All right, on this example, my first step is going to be distribute, and we have to distribute on both sides. 3x plus 6 minus x equals 2x plus 2. Next, we can combine like terms. 3x minus x is 2x, still plus 6, equals 2x plus 2. Now, when I go to move a variable, they're both the same variable. So if I subtract 2x from both sides, they zero out on both sides. I am left with just a 6 over here and just a 2 on the other side. Does 6 equal 2? No, because they do not equal each other. The answer is no solution. If they do end up equaling each other, the answer is all real numbers. All right, we've got one more example. All right, on this example, again, the first thing we're doing is distributing. 6y plus 10 plus 9 equals. We distribute the 6, we get 6y plus 18 plus 1. We combine like terms. 6y plus 19 equals 6y plus 19. If we go to subtract our variable, we subtract 6y on both sides. We're left with 19 equals 19. Because that is a true statement, they do equal each other. Our answer is all real numbers.